Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us here at the last panel discussion of the day. My name is Kristin Jensen. I am the publisher and editor at the new publishing company, 9 Bean Rose, Blasta Books, and the soon-to-be-launched next month Scoop Food magazine. And I'm going to let my panelists introduce themselves as well.
So, hi, I'm Ali Dunworth, and I'm a food writer and a consultant and a curator, kind of a mix of everything, all food, really.
Hi, my name is Anthony O'Toole, and I'm a food and travel advisor, and I work with a lot of producers, food networks, chefs, hotels on behind-the-scenes new business development projects and stuff. So.
And my name is Hennessy. I'm a food writer, and I'm also the chair of the Irish Food Writers Guild at the moment for my sins. I just want to say a very quick thank you to all the Blasta team for asking us to come here today and for all the incredible work that's been going on behind the scenes, because there's an enormous amount of organisation happening here. So just want to give you a quick shout out, sorry.
Also, I would like to thank Blasta Erin for being a sponsor of Scoop Magazine and making this possible when it's published next month. So speaking of which, the first theme of our first magazine is What is Irish Food? And now you'll see when it's published next month, we've got, Ali actually has contributed a piece, but it's a broad theme, obviously, like a huge question. So what we're going to do today is just kind of riff on this question, have it more of a conversation than, like a strict panel. And we can kind of open it up then at the end to audience comments. And obviously here we are in a food producers awards ceremony. So yet here we are all more in the media writing side of things. So I think this will be a interesting learning opportunity. And what I was thinking as I was looking at the products next door, and even just the town of Dingle itself, and what we're going to talk about today is when we talk about what is Irish food, what is Irish food now? Is it traditional or is it modern? Or is it both? Is it things like the cult favorite, the white masu reyu? Or is it soda bread? Or is it kimchi? Or is it all of these things? So, Ali, do you want to take us away with your thoughts?
It's like such a broad question, which
I know.
is why you have it as the first kind of theme for
Yes.
Scoop, but it's like, what is Irish food? But when you mention those things, a lot of the times the way I can describe Irish food best is a breakfast, because I do think that you have that combination of, like, you might have a soda bread, or you might have, like, obviously we've got amazing sourdoughs and bakers and really incredible amount of artisan bakers over the last, like, decade even. And then when you have, like, the reyu on there, does everyone know what we're talking about? And they sell it everywhere now, but a few years ago it was kind of a cult product.
Yeah.
But it's a very easy way to eat, like, an all-Irish plate, whereas you might not always say the same for lunch or for dinner. So I do think, like,
interesting.
And I think that, like, some modern classics have come out of that in the last few years. Like, the cafe culture has been huge, I think, in changing, like, our perception of Irish food.
Okay, yeah, actually, so I'm obviously American originally, but I've lived here since 1999, and when I moved here, you couldn't even, like, breakfast just wasn't a thing. You could not go out for breakfast unless you were staying in a hotel. Definitely not even brunch.
Yeah.
So even, to see how it's kind of evolved that way.
Because I moved home nearly 10 years ago from Australia, and had picked up that habit of going out for breakfast. And there was only like a handful of places. It was at the beginning of the very big sort of coffee and breakfast boom, and now like
breakfast boom.
But it is, but now, and especially over the last 3 years, like so many little towns and villages have got a gorgeous cafe where you can go in and get really nice coffee, really nice breads, and stock all the gorgeous, like, artisan products like we see here today. So this is kind of Irish food, like this
exactly
lineup and that's popped up, but I don't know what their perspectives are. Passing it on.
Passing it on. So for me, Irish food is, if you think about from the international context, it's people and landscape. Like, what is Ireland known for? And it's people and landscape. We could do anything in Ireland. We can grow anything. That's our history. If you think about, the Normans, the Vikings influencing us, and we're only like a relatively new country and culture compared to other. Like, if you think, we always compare ourselves to our Mediterranean counterparts, Spain, France, Italy. They're hundreds of years, and we have a lot of influence from them and from England. But like today, we have some great products that are telling the Irish story. Like I see Pamela down there from Wicklow Wines. Like that is part of the modern Irish food story, but the traditional as well, because of the way it's been made and the way you would preserve products over the years. But like that's how, to me, Irish food is today, and it is a mixture of the tradition, what we have in Ireland, or taking from influence from around the world, because we have a lot of people who come here.
And that's that. When you say being a new country, I think also the point is we are new in our immigration journey. So again, so I'm an immigrant, and I'm thinking of Bart here, who I think you're the perfect example, from Poland with your Filipino wife. Am I right? With an Irish, a bakery with an Irish name. And you're leaning on your stack of awards. They're propping you up. So I think that you're kind of like encapsulating, the new Irish food. But I think that's fascinating that you said.
but even when you say, like, if you think about the 40, 50 years ago when the Irish food movement happened, like if you think of Sally Barnes, she keeps saying she's a blow-in. She was part of the Irish food story and what they've done in West Cork. The smoking fish, she's brought that, but she said I'm proud Scottish. And then if you think about the cheese making culture, that was done by immigrants bringing into Ireland, but because they came to Ireland going, you have an amazing landscape and produce and ingredients that comes from the ground, and we can do anything in Ireland. The only things we can't really do, if you think about it's weather, if you think about the hot, so citrus, but you can get anything else grown in Ireland, and it's the people and the storytelling. That's what's Irish and Irish food to me. And when you travel around the world, that's what people want. Interesting.
Caroline, what's your take on this?
It's producers. It's the people who produce the fabulous raw ingredients that we have in Ireland, I think, is a huge part of what makes Irish food special. Because, I was on a food tour. I came down early yesterday, so I could do the last of the season. It was the Kingdom Food Tours with Julia, who is Italian, with an Irish partner. So here's this Italian leading a tour around Dingle, and we're going to all these different spots in the town. And I don't know if any of you guys, I think a lot of you like food tours. Not looking at anyone in particular, but it's such a brilliant way to go behind the scenes of places that you might visit anyway, and so you get a chance to talk to the people who are behind the bakery, the cheese truck, the Cosh cheese truck. We were inside in Dick Mack's brewery, which is my spiritual home, I think, and will be tonight. But it's very much about going behind the scenes. But one of the things that I especially loved was going to Jerry Kennedy's. And so he's the butcher, he's Dingle Butcher. And we had a stew there made by an American, Travis Gleason, who is the chair of the group that are launching Be a Dingle tomorrow, which is a really exciting food initiative and something that's well worth checking out. And that's happening at 11:30, and everybody's invited. But so you have Travis standing in the corner of this quintessential Irish butcher, and not just quintessential Irish, it's like real Dingle butcher. He's the last butcher left in the town. Travis had made this gorgeous beef stew, and it was made with beef that was from chuck, which was chuck beef. Because I checked that out, because I was like, I'm going to get this a bit of meat to take home with me tomorrow, from Jerry's own cattle. And he was like they have great view of Ventry, and they're up there in the hills, and they're loving it until they come in. And then also using beer from West Kerry Brewery. So, one of the nicest things was the vegetables here taste amazing, Travis. And he was going, they're the Maharees root veg, and the Maharees root veg have this lovely saline, salty flavour because of the ground they're grown in. And I was like, so if I made this in North Cork, and I'm only a few hours up the road, if I make this in North Cork, it's going to taste completely different because, I will be bringing some of these ingredients home, but I'll be able to do that with my same recipe, but with my own local beef, my own local beer, my own local veg. And that's what's so amazing about Irish food, is that, you'd be going, it's just another beef and stout stew. But it's not, because it's the beef and stout stew that is made from right here, right now, and it tastes totally different from the beef and stout stew that's just up the road, you know, with the same ingredients. And I love that about Irish food, that we can have that amount of difference. Well, we're different counties.
Like regional accents, you know.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
It's the sense of, if you think about the sense of place of where you are, like the terroir, if you think about the way for growing wines and stuff, but here you can really get a sense of place and a sense of time as well. And that's like a stew for that is.
How do you mean a sense of time?
Like a sense of time in terms of the time of year. And then if you think about the time of where we are today in terms of our food culture, you know, years ago you wouldn't be able to have, you know, white masu on things like people are in the morning breakfast with the eggs or something. It's now becoming a common thing, and in you know all around Ireland you would see it on menus, but 10 years ago you didn't, and that is part of our culture today. So.
And 10 years ago, if you had like a stout or a stew involving stout, it was only one stout generally, and there's a couple other in Cork, but we, you know, they don't get a look in a lot of the time. Whereas, but the thing is now, you can go anywhere in the country and go use your local stout and use your local beer in cooking, and obviously I'd be a big proponent of that. But it's what has really expanded over the last few years is that sense of place. And Ireland has become more regionalistic in that way, but also bringing in influences from outside. So, you know, you have that, for me, it's like having that sense of tradition. This is a very traditional stew, but it's made respecting your ingredients as well. We have fabulous ingredients, don't muck them up. But also taking in the new influences, the new beers, the new producers, and bringing them and letting them showcase how good things are.
So it's a real almost a contradiction. So on the one hand, you're saying it's very regional, very local, and yet, and again, you can see this if you go next door and look at these products, with global influences now. There's, you know, African hot sauces and kimchi, or like you touched on cheese earlier. It's like we've got Tipperary brie, and I saw a few others, and now they're gone out of my head. So it's this marriage in the middle, I think, you know, just that we're able to take the best quality regional, local ingredients, and yet now with this influence, and to get back to what you said, of people bringing their traditions, their flavors, their cultures, and it becomes like a spice bag because, you know, just this unique Irish mashup of kind of like this a la carte picking and choosing. And like myself coming from America, I often think, so I fully get behind the whole local thing, but I often think, you know, in America, the average food travels 1,500 miles to reach your plate. So I always think, gosh, all Irish food is local food, so that we can drill down to these small regions is just incredible, and it's such a privilege. But really, I feel like anything I'm eating from the island is pretty local, good. Yeah, is local. So to get back to the storytelling aspect, because one of the things with my publishing company, I always say there's two things that connect everybody everywhere, and that's food and stories. We all have that in common, doesn't matter where we come from. And so that's one of the things I'm trying to highlight with our books and with Scoop Magazine. So given the fact that we're all like on the food media side, the other question I wanted to ask was, what can we do to move the story of Irish food forward? Because again, and I think we might all appreciate this, the town of Dingle itself, I think, is a really interesting example, and that you've got lots of traditional, well, let's call it, you know, maybe kind of romanticized ideas of what Ireland is, alongside the beautiful jewelers and the boutique shops and the handmade crafts, and of course all the delicious food. And so my question is, how do we move that story forward in a wider sphere? Ali, what do you think?
Well, I think I mentioned this to you earlier on, was that I think like I have a responsibility as a journalist, and also when I curate a lot of festival and events, and even when they're putting on the event here, like you have a responsibility to tell the full story and not just to focus on the easy ones. Like it's easy enough to find, we still want to celebrate the people we've had for ages, our cheesemakers, the Cashew Blues, the Duras, like that stuff, but I think it's kind of going deeper and trying to find new stories to tell. And I think you have to try and be representative when you're writing about something. Like I was we were doing this together yesterday because we were sharing an office, and I was like, it's very easy always to get like 5 male chefs to give you an answer on something. But, you know, a few years ago, I was always like, okay, I want to have 50-50 male-female. And now I'm like, okay, I want to have that gender balance, but now I also want to have like maybe 50% Irish, maybe 50% new Irish. So whether it's like Bart and Nicole did an event with me last week, they did an incredible menu, and all the produce was pretty much from Kilkenny. And then Bart had Polish dishes in there, and Nicole had Filipino dishes in there, and then Seamus Sheridan ended it with a cheese board with all Irish cheese. And that night to me was like everyone was blown away by the food, and it was perfect. So I think like storytelling, and you're the same with the books, like you have a responsibility, because the reason you started that was because, like, and we love Nevins here and we love Donal, but we have a lot of the same cookery books and TV shows again and again and again. And I think when we have that opportunity in the media to stand up and say, no, let's make it a little bit different, let's make it more interesting, and then we do kind of get to shape what everyone else gets to read and hear about. So kind of you bear that responsibility, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'm from RD in County Louth, and so it's in between Drogheda and Dundalk. It's very small, and yet we have a huge Polish community. We have a Polish food shop. The Centra stocks, you know, lots of Polish products. It occurred to me, like my daughter, who's in 6th year, most of her friends are children of first generation children.
Yeah.
I mean, as my daughter herself is. And it's like, and this is RD. This is not Dublin.
Yeah.
You know, it's so if this is this tiny town in tiny County Louth is even this actually cosmopolitan. And yet, I don't think that perception has traveled abroad at all. You know, that it's still seen as very, you know, meat and 2 veg, and like what I always say is, if you were to look at what the food media internationally puts up every St. Patrick's Day, like all we eat here is
corned beef.
Cannon,
We don't eat corned beef.
Corned beef, soda bread, and we put Baileys in all our desserts.
Yeah.
And you're kind of going, okay, and this is where
and
I think
there's no
the
other
tension.
stout other than Guinness.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
And
so
we just, you know, Guinness,
that is the biggest missed opportunity from Ireland. Like we let that happen every year in St. Patrick's.
Oh, but I'm not sure we let it happen.
No.
Just it's go-to. It's just
it
and
is.
it's lazy journalism, and that's what I'm talking about. Like we
lazy
have a
food writing.
responsibility not to put. We can't control what the American magazines are going to write, but we can try and
Point any
control.
fingers.
We could try and control a little bit, although we don't exactly have control of what gets printed. But that's why you've started the magazine. Why Dee, who you work with, has Spice Bags podcast, which is brilliant, and they interview people in food and drink in Ireland who are not from Ireland originally, and that's brilliant and
yet are
interesting.
now integral to the Irish food scene.
Yeah, and even from that, then Dee sort of encouraged me at events. I might have a Polish panel or a Brazilian panel, and then they're really thankful because they find it really difficult to find a place and find a voice, because even though we think we're not all cliquey and inward, like we are, like you all know each other, and it's easier if you're Irish because you might know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're new in Ireland, you've only been here 5 or 10 years, you don't have the same access to people. So you kind of have to give everyone a leg up whenever you can.
Absolutely, because that was very much my experience. It's like, oh, I have no built-in network. I didn't go to school with anybody here. I didn't, you know, like, I'm not related to anybody just down the road. So yeah,
and I did have a network 10 years ago when I came home, but like it was easier for me to make my network because I knew 1 or 2 people. You know, it was
the
easier.
benefit. It's like once you're in, you know, just once you know that one person, then like all, you know, many more doors can be open to you.
Yeah, sorry, I took over that.
But I do think what you're saying though is very valuable, Ali, because there is a responsibility, and I think, you know, like in the Irish Food Writers Guild,
we talk about it a lot, don't we?
Yeah, it's something that we think and we value very highly, like the opportunity to get the word out there about what everybody is doing, and it's not just everybody within a small cohort. We're trying to expand it out and make sure that people know, because, and one of the great things about coming here is, like, it's really interesting to see who wins, but it's also, for me, it's really interesting to see who's shortlisted or see whose products are on display, because, you know, they might be producers, they might be winners next year or something, but you're just going, oh, there's something really interesting here. This is a producer I haven't heard of before, haven't encountered. And it's like a great chance to discover this, because we've been missing this physical getting out and being able to sample things and try things and taste things. And one of the really important things about food is it's the last analog experience. I know that great things were done with food online and Beloit particularly did a really good job with food online during the pandemic, if I'm allowed to mention it. But there's still something nice sitting around a Zoom table with other colleagues and tasting things together, but nothing compares to being here and to being in a room with other people who love food and produce food, and you're just, and you're chatting away inside in the pub, and then you're standing next to somebody and they're telling you about their product as well. And so that's really important. And that's how you get stories, new stories.
Honestly, where innovation happens as well, because the collaboration that happens from these and the problem solutions that we all share with each other. Yep. Like one of the biggest things that I do, I work with the producers a lot from a networking point of view. So a lot of tourism networks and producer networks, so Wexford Food Family takes Wexford. I work with a little bit with Kerry and then Laois and then in Dublin as well. And then I'm the head of the Food Council for Eurothox Ireland, which Myrtle Allen founded many years ago with a lot of other chefs around Europe. And it was about protecting the integrity of the producers and make sure that they're getting to be part of their story. So if it was in Ireland or in France, or making sure the smaller ones, because they're the ones who are protecting the culture. They're on the ground. They're the ones they're just constantly doing their own what they were doing. If they're growing vegetables or rearing beef, they're not, attending events or telling the story. And that's what Eurothox was supposed to be about. It's about protecting that and make sure that the chefs are selling it through the menus. And the biggest thing that with events and what we missed during the pandemic was that it was helping each other. The pandemic was great in one sense, but there was so many problems that we all could have helped each other just over having a pint. That type of thing. And this evening, we'll all be in Dick Mac's and we'll be all dancing and, we'll all dance the problems away. And then tomorrow morning you might arrange to meet someone and say, oh, I want to chat to you about something. How did you do that product or that labeling or that flavor or where did you source that thing? That's Ireland and that's Irish food, and that's why we could be so progressive, and that's why we have some amazing produce in there today.
So it sounds like a common theme is people on our side of the business have a responsibility to, whether it's to move away from this kind of lazy, cliched go-to stories.
And that's what people have been working on. And I suppose, we're accessible. That's the important thing to point out as well. With the Irish Food Writers Guild, we have a website. Everybody is there and their contact details. With the four of us, we're all on social media. And I think that's been a great leveler, for producers being able to reach out and talk to journalists and writers and things like that.
Whatever about the pandemic,
and to get their story out themselves.
The social media, whether you love it or hate it, is brilliant for producers, for farmers, for anyone who uses it and is into it, because it's often the first point that we see something, we share something. Certainly, as soon as I eat something that I love here, I'll post it on Instagram. And I know the people who follow me because they're interested in food. And even you meet people that the first time I ever met Russell and Patrick, I'd never met them, but we'd been friends on social media for a year and a half, and same with Shane. And you could build relationships. I know it's not the same as meeting people in real life, but then you come here and you go up to people and go, hi, we're friends on Instagram or we've tweeted each other, but it's a great resource. And I think that over the pandemic as well, it was brilliant because we had nothing else to do. So and it's been a big part, so you can utilise the sort of free resources that are there, I think, if you want to spread the word more.
So I think it would be fair to say then another theme is, and maybe is Ireland unique in this sense of collaboration and collegiality and sharing knowledge. Does this happen in other countries?
Well, we're so small. I think you forget that there is, only so many degrees of separation between everybody, and it's not the same. I'd been in London and food for a long time, and you don't know everybody. You never could.
Really? Okay.
God, it's not even. I couldn't even compare it. You'd never. But in Ireland, you can access everybody easier, or, no one's geographically too far from each other.
Also that,
yeah. Or you'll always find someone in common, especially in food. You'll know someone who knows somebody or has experience if you want to get into a certain shop with your product, or if you want to find something. You could track it down. You could put it on Twitter, you could put it on Instagram.
Yeah.
But I think also a really important thing is to ask for help. If you're a food producer or if you're you know, if you're thinking about like doing something, it's like just reach out and talk to somebody, because people are very accessible these days, in much more so I think than they used to be, and it's so much easier to track somebody down. You know, if you read their articles and you like what they write, and you like going, well, maybe just send them a message. And
there's nothing nicer, is there? If someone says to you, I enjoyed that, or I found something in it that was useful.
Can I call you? Can I have a chat with you about something? And like, I know I've never had any problems picking up the phone to somebody and having a chat, and it's lovely to have that one-on-one with a producer that you might have only encountered on social media. You know, but then again, there are lots of people who are not on social media. So, you know, this is why this analog event is lovely.
Yeah.
You know, that you get to come and actually meet people and, you know, swap business cards and things like that, and you know, have a chat and just go, look, taste this. And because in the end of the day, we all love food. We wouldn't be here if we didn't love food. And particularly, we all love Irish food, because we all see the value in spending that little bit extra for something that's really good and produced on your own doorstep.
Yeah.
Because, you know, things are not great at the moment. We don't know how it's going to go. It's going to be hard. But in the end of the day, I think we can all understand the value in paying a couple of euros extra, to see the producers we love coming out the other side. And I think that's a hugely important part of the Irish food story. And we saw that particularly during the pandemic, when people turned to their local breweries, their local bread makers, their local restaurants, and supported people like that. And I would hope in terms of things that are going to be happening in the next 6 to 8 months, that they would, you know, and I'm not asking anyone to penury themselves by spending so much, you know, spending huge amounts of money, but it's just a couple of extra euros, you know, and you can get your local carrots, your local meat, support your butchers.
I think that was one of those, you know, silver lining moments of the pandemic, was when we were, you know, our 20-kilometer, 2-kilometer, whatever it was. It's like, I think there was a newfound appreciation. Again, it's so hard because, like, we're all in the bubble. We're all in the food bubble, you know, but I certainly got the sense in my area that there was a newfound appreciation of exactly how much you had on your doorstep, wherever your doorstep
Depends on where you live.
Well, Laos I was just looking enviously at all these meal kits that you know, you could get in Dublin, going, that's nice. They don't exist.
Well, only being able to travel in County Cork was pretty good.
Oh, I don't need Patrick and Russell and I. It's like Louth, Cork, not equivalent. But so we've been talking about where Irish food has been, but I'm curious, where do you see the story of Irish food going from here? And like me personally, I think it's a bit like when craft beer became a newfound movement here in Ireland, you know, about 10 years ago. It's like once you've kind of opened that bottle, let the genie out of that bottle, like, and you start tasting and appreciating craft beer, you're not really going to go back to what you had before. And it's this whole thing about, you know, we're all traveling more, we have immigration, globalization, again, you know, we all saw the effects of that and the collapsing supply chains during COVID. So I'm thinking, like, my own personal view is all the genies are out of the bottle now. The questions we're asking, what is Irish food? I think we could probably say that. What is British food? What is German food? What is French? You know, we could say that for any cuisine. As time goes on, are the lines going to blur even more? I think when we all look back to the past, we could kind of rigidly define, okay, it was easier to define. And it's becoming a much more tricky question. So I don't have any answers. I think it's worth asking the question, but what do you all think? Anthony, what do you think? Where's the future?
Where's the future? I think we all need to be mindful. You just mentioned, like, we have traveling more. We're all more educated. Like the pandemic, you know, one of the positive sides of the pandemic is convenience food became local food, and we are now understanding what is at our doorstep. We had the time to actually educate ourselves, why things cost a little bit more money, and the storytelling and the integrity around it. And I think that's, to me, you know, as we have a lot more products on display in Ireland, and that's part of the Irish food story, it's the quality that's going to shine through and the integrity. So, you know, if it's real, if it's like milk, for example. Like if you're making a cheese, that you're buying milk that's as close as possible to you. Or if it's chocolate, like chocolate is not grown in Ireland. And I always use this as an example. But if it used the same integrity as your sourcing as you would source it in Ireland, so for cream you get the best, try and get the best chocolate elsewhere and be mindful of the integrity around it, so it's not destroying a culture where it is. Look at are you supporting back? Like I love like Bean and Goose, for example, because they work and they're very mindful that cocoa beans are like they're not plentiful anymore and destroying, but they're always giving back, and it's part of their story. And then they are very hyper local in terms of what they buy in Ireland, and that's something that we all need to be mindful of, and that is the Irish foods. Like we are now on a world stage for food. I think we're at a stage now where what we wanted for many years, we are just there, but we have to be very careful that we are telling the right story, and we're not always promoting the Irish beef or salmon, because their integrity is going down because it's becoming too plentiful or too wide, and it's very hard for people, particularly international people, to come to Ireland and get that quality, like what is Irish beef and what is salmon. And that is something that's going to happen with climate change, and sustainability is a massive big thing at the moment. Irish food needs to be very careful that we are, little goes a long way. Mm-hmm. And we can't...
Quality, not quantity.
Yeah. And we cannot be on every place around the world or every place around Ireland. Like if you're a producer and you only can produce enough for 30-mile radius, that's great, that's sustainable, but don't be trying to kill yourself to be working 24/7 and doing something, because your product gets diluted. Mm-hmm. Like we have some great products in Ireland. There's enough for people in Ireland and around the world. We all work together.
Right. So work smarter, not harder.
Exactly, yeah.
Ali, what do you think? Where do you see the future of Irish food going?
Well, I think two things is I want us to keep on embracing the Brazilian, Polish, African, all the new cuisines that are bringing out new products and new restaurants and stuff. But mostly I think for Irish food, like I kind of want to continue that it's filtering down more to the masses, because we do live in a little bubble and everyone here understands what we're talking about and the products, and we understand the value in buying. Mm-hmm. We're looking at the ingredients and we understand the value in buying in certain places and how that, but the majority of people still don't. The majority of people still eat, go to the supermarket and shop on price and convenience. Yeah. But that has changed and it keeps on changing. And actually, I love that.
I just say, in My Boy Blue, sorry, they had on the tables there, because we had some lunch there today, a little leaflet explaining our chicken has gone up 81%. Our butter has, and it was this list of maybe a dozen products, and saying, just alerting the customer, like, look, this is the reality of, like, these are our price increases. And I had no idea. Some of them I knew. It's like chicken, 81%. So again, it's like, and that's just quietly sitting on the table.
Yeah.
But it's a real education moment.
Yeah. But it's even more like this, and the supermarkets, like most people shop in the supermarket, but Aldi, Super Value Duns, they're making more effort to put in more Irish products. And whatever you say about that, the price squeeze, and I know that's a whole other thing, but it's still good that they're there in front of people who don't live in our world and don't know about food the way that we do. So I'd love to just keep it filtering out like that, so that like every year that cohort of people eating and thinking, asking those questions just keeps on growing. And I think with the next generation, that it's going to take a long time, but it's already drastically different. And lockdown was kind of good for that, because I know friends who certainly changed their shopping habits where they never had time before to think about if they're feeding kids. They just did the shop. It was so like the worst part of their week. Yeah. But then it was like, oh, this is something to do. Can I order, you'd order farm boxes, and they've kept those habits because they realised the price difference wasn't that huge when you were buying your leg of lamb from the farmer down the road. It was the same price as buying it in Tesco, and it's far better. Yeah. So I'd love for Irish food just to keep on spreading out like that. So I'm thinking about it within the country, and then hopefully the word would spread like to the rest of the world.
Caroline, what do you think about all this?
Well, I just really hope to see I lived in New Zealand 17 years ago, and when I was there, being away from Ireland is really good, because you come back with new eyes and you're going, wow, look what we have here on our own doorsteps. And Ireland wasn't great for food at that stage, but you could find, like the McKenna's guides for my Bible, because you could find all these little pockets of really good stuff. And I used to say it was like 60-40, like 60% bad, 40% good, when you were going around just like into cafes and restaurants, whereas it's gone so so much more the other way now. So you're thinking you could get like definitely 70-80% good, 20% don't give a damn about whatever they're putting on the plate. So now people do care about food, and the things like that your talks, that Myrtle Allen and all the chefs in your talks worked on to increase the visual or increase the profile of producers. Like you go into any restaurant, any cafe, and they're naming their coffee bean suppliers. They're naming the where the meat is coming from Jerry's. That they're talking about where their vegetables are from, and all this kind of thing. And I know that this it's like everywhere these days, but that's really important, because those are the people that you are supporting by spending your money in that cafe, and those are the people you can go away and support. Those are the people you want hanging around. If you like somebody's coffee, if you like somebody's chocolate, like look at all the produce in there. And as I was saying, it's not just the award winners, it's also the shortlisted people. Look at the quality of the stuff in there and go away, and you can find it on your own doorstep and spend your money on that. So I think, for the next while, I do think it's going to be hard. There's no doubt about that. But I think we all have a responsibility, and I know we're all trying to figure out our electricity bills and all that kind of thing as well, and that's not going to be easy for a lot of people. But food can be democratic, and we can all buy Irish, whether it's like a bunch of carrots from the honesty box down the road, and that's going to be cheaper than going to the supermarket. Or I'm sorry, now you also have your lost leaders in the supermarkets with carrots, especially. But you can find such great produce on your own doorstep, and like Ali said, people have started to realise that it's not much more expensive than going to the supermarket. So it's really important to look locally, and as Kristin says, it's Irish produce is all local.
Yeah,
so
it's all good.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if anybody has questions for us or wants to kind of add to this conversation. I would love to hear other perspectives. Oh, I love funny anecdotes.
Well, because Ali said about the name Aron. Like Polish and a Filipino, and the name is Aron. And you said about kids. So, how the name? We were supposed to be called Black Abbey Bakers, but we lost that site. So then there's my Polish parents. They called it Filipino, and my sister and her husband. They're both Polish, sitting in a room. They have 3 kids, and sitting in a room. What will we name the bakery? And at that time, my 9-year-old niece comes in, and she's going to an Irish school. She's Irish. She's not Polish anymore. She's Irish-Polish. She goes into the room, looks at us, and it's like, what are you guys doing? Oh, we're trying to figure out a name for Uncle's Bakery. And then she's looking at us like, why don't you call it Aron? It means bread in Irish. and then she turns out her eyes and walks out of the room. And then we look at each other for the longest time with silence. And we take out our phones and Google Translate that. And that's
you didn't believe her.
And that's how the name came to be. That's
so obvious to her, yeah.
It was just like, duh.
Brilliant.
Hi, I'm Una Monaghan. I'm a food business consultant. I have a question for Anthony. Anthony, you made a comment there towards the end I didn't understand, something about salmon and beef going down. Can you elaborate on that? I just didn't understand what you were talking about. Sorry, maybe I missed it.
In terms of the quality, so at the moment we're overselling salmon and beef, and the quality is not shining through because now we are focusing on sustainability. But a couple of years ago we were overfishing salmon and farmed salmon. I'm not going to go there because it's a whole other story. But we are feeding them farm fish, and there's lice and stuff. Is that really part of our Irish food story, or is it the wild salmon that's going up the rivers and going up the river from the sea and back again? And the same with beef. Is it beef that's pasture-fed beef, 12 months of the year, or 9 to 11 months of the year, depending on our weather and climate change? Or is it beef that's in sheds, that's grain that's imported all the time? Is that really Irish food? That's what I was going with. So people were promoting it. People want to come and taste the real salmon and the real beef. It's only a little bit. So we just need to be careful on that.
Any other questions or comments or funny anecdotes? In the back.
Okay. I suppose more, I don't know, is this a funny anecdote or not? But I actually grew up on a farm, and we went organic about 10 years ago or so. And my mum breeds rare breeds of cattle and stuff. And I suppose maybe more of a comment in that, we're up against factory farmers that, like Larry Goodman and stuff, is farming American style in feedlot style, and they're the largest organic farmers in Ireland, and it just feels unfair when you're doing your best to be small, extensive, as much as you can to be friendly to nature, and then you're up against guys who, their cattle have never seen the sky, and they can have the same certification as us. Just seems mad.
Yeah.
I think, Mary, actually what you're saying, and this is something that I think we try to point out as food writers, is the importance of supporting small producers. And look, none of us have much money, but I prefer to put my money, and I used to be a producer as well, and I knew how important it was that when people came and bought one of our beers, what that meant to me, and especially to have people locally buying our beers. It was so important at a time when we had no money. So, anything I could, then I put back into the local farmers market, because again, I was like, well, these people are investing in me. They want to see me in business, and I want to see these people in business, and it's very circular. And I think, we mentioned the word sustainable earlier on. A sustainable food economy is also us all surviving in the end of the day as well. So, I want to invest in my local farmer because I want to be able to go down the road and get those fabulous carrots. So, and I don't want the cheap ones.
But I think that, again, that becomes an issue of storytelling insofar as getting that story out there and even just acknowledging outside of the bubble that there is a difference. It's organic and then there's organic.
Yeah. But I do think we've loads of, and as storytellers, as journalists, you have to battle against it's not misinformation, but information that is valid in America, stuff like Cowspiracy or Seaspiracy or those documentaries that become huge. Your friends that aren't into food watch it and they're like, did you know this? Did you know that? And you're like, who made it? Where is it about? Who funded it? And we think about it critically like that, and we understand that that doesn't pertain to Ireland and to Irish farming. And I think that it's a really valid point, because I think that what Mary says there, we do need to educate more the difference between organic in Ireland and how difficult it is to be certified, and how many people are farming essentially organically but don't have the certification because they don't believe in it, because I was going to curse there, they think it's a load of, which it is in certain circumstances. You know more about farming than me, but it's hard to get that story across. I always say local first. Go and buy locally and ask those questions. If you're worried about what's being sprayed on your food, buy it from someone you can ask the question to. And you can do that in Ireland.
One of the things I always say to people, if you're visiting a farm or a producer or something, go and ask them questions if they know, or look at their hands. Because ultimately, if their hands are dirty, ultimately they're the ones who are farming. They're not the ones writing the paper and doing, they don't have office people. They're the ones who are farming, answer the phone calls, delivering. They're the people that you're really looking at for. And yes, there is, medium and large. There's some really good companies in Ireland who are really good as well, and they're supporting local and being co-ops and stuff. And I think that's going to grow a lot more in Ireland. We're going to have a lot more co-ops. Because that paperwork is killing us. And with climate change and costs going up, we all have to work together. So maybe procurement, maybe, in Wexford, there's some great things happening in Wexford, particularly with producers. They have consultants for health and safety or quality control. So 4 or 5 come together and they pay for a full time to look after, because they couldn't pay it themselves. And I think that's a great way. And then same with, with a lot of the HACCP and procurement, like sourcing, packaging and stuff. group together and support each other, because it's the only way we're going to survive, because costs are only going to increase. They're not going to come down.
So that goes back to the collaboration.
Yeah, it's collaboration.
Yeah.
And like food is so complicated at the moment. Like it's 10 years ago, a chicken was a chicken. Now a chicken, we have several different ways chickens are reared. And I understand it because I live and breathe it on a daily basis. But my parents still believe a chicken, a €2 chicken, is the same as a chicken that my grandparents used to raise many years ago. Like they just think it's a chicken because they don't understand it. And when I educate them,
what's also important is sometimes that €2 chicken is the difference between feeding the family and not feeding the family. And I think, and again, we're lucky to be able to speak in a position where I'm happy to spend that extra money, but it is difficult to understand those
it's
different
very
levels.
difficult because we live in an expensive world now. Like years ago, we didn't have the taxes that we had and all the additional layers that are now built in. Like it's expensive to live these days, so we have to make difficult decisions.
And you know what? The best way to celebrate Irish food is by eating it.
Yeah, if you can,
drinking it.
Yeah, if you can buy one. Oh
yeah, sorry,
thing.
we forget about that.
Yeah, I always say if you got
Friday
one
evening.
thing, if there's one thing you can add to your shopping basket every week, that's local. Like you're making an impact and you're supporting the circular economy. I'm not expecting you to go out and buy everything local. Like you couldn't.
You can't because it's not available to most people either.
It's not.
Well, I think that is a great kind of call to action to end on. So one more thing in the basket. And thank you to all the food producers for all the amazing work you do. So under difficult and circumstances. so thank you for all coming. And that's the end of the talks now for today. And okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.